folks. Welcome to the program. This, of course, is Stinchfield, the podcast. Great to be along with you. I have a theory about why what appears to be a cover-up from inside President Trump's DOJ about Jeffrey Epstein. This theory relates Epstein's ties to the CIA to what is going on in the Middle East and the talks between Israel and Hamas, the United States and Iran, Israel and Iran, and then you have Saudi Arabia, Qatar, all those other countries, I believe were tied up with Epstein. Some of their leaders may have been blackmailed by Epstein. Some of their leaders of those countries may have been on Epstein's island. They may be on the client list, which most certainly does exist. After all, Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's number one confidant, his girlfriend, whatever she was, his partner in crime, she has a little black book that's not so little that is still sealed by a federal judicial court. That black book is said to have 2,000 names of people associated with Jeffrey Epstein, possible clients. So, so whether you want to call it a client list or whether you want to call it a black book, whether you want to call it a list that the FBI put together, I don't care what you call it, but I want names and I want justice for these victims. And I want justice against those who were covering this up. So we've got a lot of questions we got to answer today. Why Dan Bongino and Kash Patel have taken a total 180, I actually believe they're just being good soldiers. I think this is President Trump saying, we are not going to release this because it could jeopardize the Middle East. I've got a former FBI agent who says that's not good. If we're starting to jeopardize negotiations in return for letting child molesters skate, that's not a country this FBI agent wants to live in. So we're going to talk to that gentleman. Mike Benz, I'm going to run an interview I did with him. He originally tipped me off to this idea that the Middle East is somehow involved in all of this with Jeffrey Epstein. And make no mistake, I do not believe President Trump is on this list. Joe Biden and Barack Obama and the rest of them would have released or leaked those damning documents if they existed a long time ago. I don't think that's what's at play here. So we're going to go through a lot of it, including President Trump's, quite frankly, shocking statements and how many of his former officials who were saying they've seen the evidence now backtracking, including Pam Bondi. A lot of it doesn't make sense. But we're going to try to make some sense of it today, and you're going to want to hear these CIA ties that Jeffrey Epstein has and how it all comes back to the Middle East. All right? But before we do that, I want to tell you about my friends over at Patriot Mobile. You know, I love these guys. I've been with them a long time, or they've been with me a long time. It's a great partnership. Official provider of cellular service for Stinchfield's Army. PatriotMobile.com/Grant. Use that promo code GRANT for a free month service. But here's the deal. Switching is easy. It takes minutes. They're patriots behind this company, so they believe in the things that we believe in. I believe in a parallel economy, giving them business for that. You choose between the three big networks, so you're not going to sacrifice service. You get 100% U.S.-based customer service, and you know that a portion of the money you pay for your cell service is going to go to causes like Folds of Honor, gun rights groups, pro-life organizations, help fund or talk shows like this so we can spread the message to the rest of the world. All of this super important for the success of America. It's why I love Patriot Mobile. You should too. If you haven't switched, you're funding the woke agenda of the left by being with the other big three cell phone companies. So make the switch today. Just do it. They'll give you a good deal to switch too. You're not going to be out of money or out of pocket out of any money. So PatriotMobile.com/Grant. Use that promo code GRANT or call them at 972-PATRIOT. That's 972-PATRIOT and tell them Grant Stinchfield sent you. All right, with that, folks, let's get the show started.
This is Stinchfield. Here's your host, Grant Stinchfield.
All right. Thank you. It is great to be here with you this morning. So what is going on with the Trump administration? I mean, when I look at what's happening, we're talking about amnesty, which they call it a work program. No, I don't want that. Who's in the ear of President Trump that thinks this is a good idea? This is everything President Trump has been against. We don't make special classes of people. Then the Epstein files. President Trump ran on making the Epstein files and JFK and MLK and UFO files public. Let's get a drop like the JFK files where we can go through all of these files and make decisions for ourselves about what is in them or who's behind them. Instead, we get Donald Trump basically making a claim. Epstein? We're still talking about Epstein? Watch.
So could you resolve whether or not he did? And also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape on the night of the stabbing?
Yeah, sure. If
Hey, Pam, could I just interrupt for
Sure.
1 second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration, but you go ahead.
So that comment, we're going to talk about this today on the podcast, that I do believe the Middle East peace talks are behind President Trump making those comments of trying to say, hey, nothing to see here. But we know there's something to see here because we were told by many in his administration that there is something to see there. Now, Jeffrey Epstein had close ties to the CIA. Bill Barr's father brings Jeffrey Epstein into the CIA. Jeffrey Epstein was apparently a gun runner during the Iran-Contra scandal. Close ties there. We know he had a bounty hunting business, basically, that specialized in the Middle East. Close ties to many of these world leaders. Were many of these world leaders customers of Jeffrey Epstein? Are they on the list? Is that why President Trump is saying, hey, nothing to see here? I believe, and I don't have this nailed down or told this, this is speculation, but I believe President Trump is the one that says, I don't want to risk the Mideast talks. I don't want to risk releasing who's in these files because it involves some of the key players in the Middle East, surrounded Jeffrey Epstein, surrounding Israel, surrounding Iran, and the other key countries in the Middle East. And we're going to let Mike Benz spell some of that out, former State Department official who's on the front lines of uncovering stuff like this, from an interview I did on Real America's Voice in just a minute. But we're going to still continue to go through some of these things on the podcast today. So you've got President Trump saying this. I believe Dan Bongino and Kash Patel are just being good soldiers. They're being told, hey, you work for me now. This is what we need to do in the interest of national security and for the best interest of the nation. And Dan and Kash are now good soldiers. But they don't look good in all of this. I wish there was something I could do to help them or fix the situation because they were put in a really, really, really bad spot. Now, Matt Gaetz talked about this with my buddy Benny Johnson.
You got a 99%
on Epstein. Issue. Bill Barr is the one that needs to be called in to give sworn testimony on what happened there at Bureau of Prisons, because that is not that. There's just no way that the story you're getting is the real story there. No freaking way, and Bill Barr knows it.
I think most people believe that, right? And like it's like no way that that's.
I actually think it was I actually think that on Epstein, it was a foreign government that took him out. I don't think it was a domestic enterprise.
So if it's a foreign government, this gets back to what foreign government's capable of. I guess maybe MI6, maybe England. We already know about Prince Andrew. You're not going to have Canada or Mexico involved in this, right? You're not going to have any of the Central or South American countries going to be able to pull off something like this. There's only one country in the Middle East that would be able to pull off something like this. That would be Israel. That would mean they needed to off him so he didn't say anything. See, my actual belief are the files have already all been destroyed. Maybe President Trump knows of some of them. We were told by Pam Bondi there were 2,000 pages of documents. What's in those? The FBI was trying to hide them. If there's nothing to see, then what were they hiding? That doesn't really make any sense. Matt Gaetz continues.
Really?
I do. I'm not going to say which one, but I don't think it was domestic inspired to take out of him. I think that was a foreign operation, government sponsored.
So foreign operation took out Epstein inside of our prison.
Yes.
So they must have been allowed to.
Oh, I think it was in concert with people in our government.
Wow.
But not at like some, low level guard getting bribed kind of way.
Yeah.
At a state to state level.
So that's probably a lot of partied interests in keeping that under wraps.
You better believe it. Weapon systems at play, global deals at play.
Interesting
To say the least. He basically alludes to what I'm telling you. Global deals at play. We're not talking about tariffs. We're talking about peace in the Middle East. Something we've been striving for as a society for decades and decades and decades. President Trump is close. He doesn't want to upend the apple cart by exposing some of these world leaders. We're dealing with Jeffrey Epstein. And then you do get the CIA that probably was running Epstein as a honeypot, which then means the CIA was enriching Epstein, who was either paying some of these girls or bringing some of these young girls in. That would mean the CIA, our taxpayer dollars, going to fund child molestation, child sex trafficking. Now, is that something we want released? For me, it is. I want an accounting of who decided this would be a good idea to run a blackmail operation on foreign leaders, powerful people, whoever it might be. Now, Jake Tapper, I'm just going to play this clip because obviously MAG is outraged by all of this. I don't need to tell you that. It's clear to me that MAG is outraged. President Trump has to know MAG is outraged. But he's doing this, I believe, for a greater cause that he believes is important. But that doesn't mean we still don't put the pedal to the metal, which is what we're going to do. All right, Jake Tapper, a guy I do not like.
So what's really going on here? I mean, what's really going on? Well, experts, such as our friend Julie Brown from the Miami Herald, who's been covering Epstein for years, say that the notion of Epstein having an easy-to-access client list is likely a red herring. And that's what the Trump administration is relying on, that there likely isn't a list per se. But they are also now relying on the fact that because it's MAGA influencers who often put forward so many falsehoods, legacy news media won't push the point.
Hold on a second. I'm a MAGA influencer. Name one falsehood that I've pushed. Name one falsehood my buddy Benny Johnson who has pushed. We just played there. I would throw Matt Gaetz in. He's not a congressman anymore, but he's a MAGA influencer. He didn't push any falsehoods. Everything we've pushed has turned out to be true. I was going to say the D-wad, jerkwad. How about that, Tapper?
While there might not be a list, there are certainly files that can be released. There's a trove of information that the Trump administration is right now refusing to share. Information that could well point to the powerful folks who availed themselves of the sex trafficking victims of Jeffrey Epstein. If you go, for example, to the FBI vault online, you can see that there are 22 files containing thousands of pages. Most of them are heavily redacted. Now, sure, of course, redact the names and identifying characteristics of the victims. But why not make the victim and witness testimonies public? As Julie Brown points out, there's still so much we don't know from the investigations by U.S. attorneys in Miami and in New York, witness interviews in the U.S. Virgin Islands and New Mexico. Brown writes that there's still more evidence that hasn't been published, including, quote, Epstein kept video cameras in most of his residences, and Epstein's autopsy, nor the report of the investigation into his death, has ever been made public. So while there may not be an official client list to be released, as the administration is now saying, there's a lot of extra information that is not being made public, despite Trump's Justice Department basically now saying case closed.
So, for one of the few times, I agree with Jake Tapper here. All of those things could be released. Where is the surveillance footage of Jeffrey Epstein's residences? The video surveillance that he had, cameras in his residences. I'm told by Pam Bondi now that it's just thousands of hours of child porn that he downloaded onto his computer. I believe that's probably true, but I also believe that the video evidence of his residences most certainly does exist. He mentioned investigations by U.S. attorneys in other districts like the Southern District of Florida. This Alex Acosta, U.S. attorney who was up for prominent spot in President Trump's administration, ultimately passed over because he let Jeffrey Epstein go with just a slap on the wrist. But his claim about letting Jeffrey Epstein go with a slap on his wrist is because the CIA and the intelligence community came to him and said he's an asset of ours. We can't afford to have him put in prison. So we got to drop this case. This happens far more often than you and I know about or would even think would happen, but it does. So Alex Acosta ought to be interviewed. How about make public the transcripts between interviews with Acosta and the witnesses he interviewed for his investigation into Epstein? That guy is a very, very important figure, as Mike Benz is going to point out in just a moment. But that's something we need to get to the bottom of. Then, I saw this on CNN. Interesting. This is Jamie Dimon. He is the CEO, obviously, of JP Morgan Chase. Apparently, Epstein was funneling the money through all the big banks. So the big banks know where the money was coming from. It was billions of dollars.
Client of yours, and that is Jeffrey Epstein. JP Morgan's being sued now by the U.S. Virgin Islands. They're alleging that your bank helped facilitate payments to Epstein's victims and benefited from human trafficking while ignoring warnings. Do those allegations have merit?
So I cannot talk about current litigation except to say that whenever these things come up, we have some of the best lawyers in the world, compliance, out of the DOJ, out of SEC enforcement divisions, who review all of these things and make decisions at the time based on what they know, as best as they know.
You're going to be deposed, we've learned now, in this case in the spring. In retrospect, Jamie, do you think JP Morgan should have acted more quickly after Epstein pleaded guilty to one of these charges in 2008, because he was your client for 5 more years?
Hindsight is a fabulous gift.
The answer should have been yes, we should have acted more responsibly. If what they're saying is true about Epstein, and after all it is, because he was convicted, so was Ghislaine Maxwell, they're convicted sex offenders, sex traffickers, which also means how is there nothing to see? Because how do you convict 2 people on this? And by the way, what about the other users of these poor young girls? We're told there's 200 victims. So where are the people that abuse the victims? They've never been charged with anything. That's what outrages us so much. And so it's not that we're just talking about Jeffrey Epstein. I could give a rat's you-know-what about Jeffrey Epstein. I want people held accountable. I want people in the government who help facilitate child sex trafficking, and I want the users and abusers prosecuted. That's why we're upset about this. Why I play you the Jamie Dimon tape is to show you to the lengths at which Epstein was connected. That's the CEO of JP Morgan Chase. I don't know. It's one of the biggest banks on the face of the earth. Got it and Bank of America, right? This is where the connections are. Now, the interview with Mike Benz. I did it on the Real America's Voice show. I'm going to play it for you in just a moment. But before I do, folks, let me tell you about my friends over at EnergizedHealth.com. Energized Health helped me lose 15 pounds in 2 weeks. Now, that's not what everybody happens, but it was pretty easy. I just changed my life around, and I got hydrated at a cellular level in a scientific fashion of how you hydrate your cells, okay? Very different from just pounding water. The folks there have an amazing program that changed my life. I got mental clarity. I lost body fat. I gained muscle mass. My blood pressure went down. My testosterone levels went up. My whole life started to change, including my relationships with people. I became calmer as I got in better shape. And I was already in pretty good shape to start. But if you got to lose 200 pounds or you just want to tighten it up like I did, Energized Health is the protocol I want you to try out. EnergizedHealth.com. They got a 555 challenge, 5 pounds, 5 days, $5 that can't be beat. You got nothing to lose, right? But wait. EnergizedHealth.com. EnergizedHealth.com. Do me a favor. You tell them Grant Stinchfield sent you when you go there and change your life. All right. The interview with Mike Benz. I found this fascinating. It was on Real America's Voice. I want you to listen to Mike because he gets to the heart of all of this. So let's roll it.
Thanks, Grant.
Mike, what in the world is going on?
Well, it's unclear at this point. The leaks to Axios about the no client list confirmation of the FBI assessment that Epstein killed himself, and then the statement from the president that people should just sort of forget it, Jake, it's Chinatown, I think is going to cause long-term indigestion for the MAGA base, given that it was not just the MAGA base, but it was Donald Trump himself who raised the Epstein issue about Hillary Clinton. It was J.D. Vance who tweeted constantly about the mysteries of Epstein and how it looked like he was being let off. It was pretty much everyone at current FBI and DOJ who crusaded on this. And the main issue is that they have not showed their work. We have not had a document dump like Tulsi Gabbard provided with the JFK files. We could say, at least with the JFK files, look, no one expected to find some random cable or paper laying around saying, I killed JFK, signed confession, this is the guy. But what we learned was a tremendous amount through those declassifications about the internal thought process of the intelligence world as it pertained to matters relating to JFK. And the issue with the Epstein case here is Epstein is a part of a much bigger network. And it is my contention that the CIA has had tabs on Jeffrey Epstein since at least 1983. It would be almost impossible for the CIA to not have been keeping tabs on Jeffrey Epstein, because Jeffrey Epstein was the money fixer and money launderer for Adnan Khashoggi, the CIA's main illicit arms trafficker during the Iran-Contra affair, and dating back 30 years. Adnan Khashoggi was the largest arms dealer in the world. He was the CIA and DOD's main guy for transporting and brokering weapons deals, especially ones where the money trail couldn't be tracked. And Jeffrey Epstein was the guy who made the money untrackable. He was a professional money launderer in his first phase from 1981 to 1987. He even had a fake Saudi passport to be able to do dealings with Adnan Khashoggi. It's impossible. The CIA's entire operation rested on the success of Epstein's ability to do this successfully.
Mike, do you think that Epstein's wealth came mostly from the CIA and then blackmailing the people that he had information on? Now we're told by Pam Bondi that it's just child porn he downloaded from the internet. When I'm also hearing that Bill Barr's father was a CIA guy and was the one who recruited Epstein to do some of the things you're talking about here. That's Bill Barr's father, Mike.
Yes, and Bill Barr started his career at the CIA, spent his first 7 years in the CIA, told his high school guidance counselor he wanted to be director of the CIA, only left the CIA after Jimmy Carter's CIA reforms handicapped the CIA. And then Bill Barr, as you mentioned, his father, Donald Barr, was also CIA. He was in the OSS. And then Donald Barr, Bill Barr's father, recruited Jeffrey Epstein to be a math and physics teacher at the prestigious Dalton School in New York without Epstein even having a college degree. It was from there that Epstein met the CEO of Bear Stearns and went on to work for 5 years at Bear Stearns. And then after he was evidently kicked out of Bear Stearns for securities malpractice, he kept relations with the C-suite and then started his own international bounty hunter company called Intercontinental Assets Group. And if I can make this point, Grant, quickly, if Pam Bondi is serious about the Epstein story, she will tell us the communications and search terms she's had with the Central Intelligence Agency. Simply go to the CIA files for Iran-Contra, all files on Adnan Khashoggi and the money laundering and fixing that was done at that time for the transshipment of those weapons. You will find a code name for Jeffrey Epstein in there. And also, I would like to see the public transcripts of the DOJ's internal investigation of Alex Acosta's statement after Alex Acosta, the lead prosecutor, said he let Jeffrey Epstein off because, quote, he belonged to intelligence and leave it alone because it was above my pay grade. Then there was the 350-page report that the Justice Department Ethics Committee did analyzing Acosta's decisions. They said he exercised poor judgment, but the intelligence issue was relegated to a single footnote on page 169, footnote 244. That's all we got on it. I want to know every question the Justice Department asked of Alex Acosta. That should be a public transcript, public record. If you're serious about closing the book on this, show us the books, the pages of the books that you already compiled.
So, Mike, let me ask you this question. As we lay this out, I only see really three possibilities. One is the first, that I said it's so damaging to national security that all of these presidents, all of these higher-ups say, you know what, we can't release it for national security reasons. And I'd rather they just say that and we be outraged they're not giving it up, but I wouldn't feel like I'm being lied to. The other option is there really isn't anything there. I don't buy that. There's just too much to think that there's nothing there. The other is that they've got incriminating things on whoever. Where do you think it, and they're just covering this up, where do you think it falls? Why do they not want us to see this file?
Well, unfortunately, they can't just come out and close the books by saying it's national security, because that admits that it was intelligence. National security classification is an intelligence classification. And the moment they admit that Jeffrey Epstein was part of an intelligence network, that creates a lot more questions than answers. And that retroactively explains the malpractice of the Justice Department throughout his whole treatment from 2008 through 2019. Now, the issue is what you're dealing with here is an international intelligence web. Take his role in Iran-Contra. That was illicit arms trafficking and money laundering for a CIA activity that violated international law. In that one operation alone, you have the CIA in the U.S., you have Israeli intelligence, you have UK intelligence, and you have Saudi intelligence. That's four different countries' intelligence agencies running through this single person. So if the CIA wants to, or DOD or NSC wants to protect its relationship with those countries, it's probably got to get a consensus with those intelligence agencies as well.
Mike, I believe the files have all been destroyed. I don't even think the files exist. I think they were probably destroyed a long time ago. I guess I'll ask you one more question, even though I'm over on time, but I'm fascinated by this because of the things that you know. Do you think Trump is the one making the call on this?
I think Trump listens to the sound of the ocean and interprets it on instinct. I think that a lot of different people are in Trump's ear. I agree with your assessment. I don't think Trump is anywhere in these files except on the 1995 flight logs, 12 years before there was ever any indictment. Yeah. But there are many figures around Trump world who play a strange role in the 3 degrees from Jeffrey Epstein network, or the 2 degrees, or sometimes even 1 degree. And I think that keeping the coalition together may be a consideration driving the secrecy here. Although I think that Trump does not want to be concerned with the details in the same way that Ronald Reagan did not want to be concerned with the details of Iran-Contra, because that shelters his own reputation if something goes wrong.
You made a connection I didn't really think about, and that is the Middle East connection right here with everything that we're dealing with the peace that he's trying to make here. Certainly is a great assessment of that could be playing a very large role in this. I hope I can get you back and you can keep us updated on the things that you're thinking about on this story, because I don't want to let this story go, Mike Benz. I know you. Where can people follow you?
Follow me on X at Mike Benz Cyber. Attorney General's office, if you're listening, disclose the November 2020 the private transcript of the investigators to Alex Acosta, the lines of query about the intelligence connection. Make that public if you really mean it.
I got notes written down right there, too. I will start pushing that as well. Mike Benz, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so notes written down talking about it. That's what this podcast is about. I promised them we wouldn't give it up. And so this is what we want to keep doing. Talking about this. Now, you notice what he said at the end there. November 2020, the private transcripts between Alex Acosta, I mentioned him, Benz is a former State Department official, by the way, who knows a lot about the inner workings of foreign policy and all of these government entities that are involved in this. The private transcripts from Acosta, who was the U.S. attorney that was investigating Epstein in southern Florida, what's in them? The intelligence connections. Why can't we see those? Maybe that is what President Trump doesn't want us to see, because it would, again, upend the apple cart when it comes to all of this. So what I want to do right now is tell you about my friends over at Patriot Protect, and then we're going to go to an interview with FBI agent Steve Friend, because what's going on inside the FBI. And I also want to make a comment on all the things that we've been told. We've been told a lot about what they had when it comes to Epstein. And then now all of a sudden it doesn't exist. So there's either two things. Either we were being lied to, or well, it's either we're being lied to. It's the only answer. It's are we being lied to? Sorry to put it any more bluntly than that. All right, folks, listen to me. Patriot Protect. This is important. 84 million passwords have been leaked. This is a newly uncovered AT&T breach. Exposed 184 million login credentials, complete with usernames, passwords. There's all kinds of personal information. They're not old logins either. These are from new websites. The question is, are you protected? Your information is being sold on the dark web. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, go to patriot-protect.com/grant. Okay? I did this. I signed up with Patriot Protect. They removed my personal information from the web. It's amazing to see more and more and more of it be removed as well, including my addresses, phone numbers, all taken off. I was shocked at how they were able to do this, and do this in a very quick fashion. They go to the data broker sites. There's like 500 of them. And they tell the data brokers, take this guy's information down. This is exactly what they will do for you. You've got to protect yourself. Make sure scammers skip over you, okay? Patriot Protect removes your personal information, your name, address, phone numbers, all those things, scrubbing it from hundreds of these people search websites, the data brokers, as I said. And then there's the blackout scan that goes even further to see what is for sale on the dark web, okay? So you are vulnerable. Don't be. Patriot Protect can help you. Here's the website, patriot-protect.com/grant. Promo code GRANT for 15% off. patriot-protect.com/grant. All right. Great program, and they really did help me out a lot. All right, so I want to play a couple clips for you. So one is Pam Bondi, basically on saying she's got these things on her desk, the client list.
DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I'm reviewing JFK files, MLK files. That's all in the process of being reviewed because that was done at the directive of the president from all of these agencies.
So have you seen anything that you said, oh my gosh?
Not yet.
So, not yet. But the Epstein files, or is it the Epstein list? That's the controversy. Sitting on her desk right now. And then we got this from my very, very good friend, Alina Habba, who is a stand-up individual, a great attorney for President Trump, a great confidant. I believe she is telling the truth here. I believe she saw what's in the Epstein list.
But in this case, in Epstein's case, it is incredibly disturbing. We have flight logs, we have information, names that will come out.
Is it going to be shocking
I don't see how it's not shocking that there were so many individuals that were hidden and kept secret and not been held accountable. Let's talk about the reverse. I believe in accountability. So you have to now go through your process. Now, I won't say they're guilty until they go through their time in court. But again, now it's time for accountability. We have seen for so many years, Pierce, in this country, many investigations, subpoenas, testimonies in Congress, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a general frustration with accountability.
There is. But the first part of her statement was important because she said, I don't think how you see it's not shocking. Okay? Let's see.
Information, names, that will come out.
Is it going to be shocking?
I don't see how it's not shocking that there were so many individuals that were hidden and kept secret and not been held accountable. Let's talk about the reverse.
All right, so I don't see how it's not shocking. Thousands of names. So either she didn't see it and expected there were lots of names. It's almost like an Adam Schiff scenario, okay? Adam Schiff, when he talked about Russian collusion, he claimed he saw the evidence, but then it came out he never saw the evidence because the evidence wasn't there. Maybe he was told the evidence was there and he was just speaking, or he was making it up. Alina Habba doesn't make stuff up. I know that. Like this woman is a stand-up woman. So that means she saw it, and that means something is there, and that means that something is now being buried. And again, it gets back to what I believe is the Middle East situation. Now, Burleson, Congressman Eric Burleson, is mad that we're not seeing what we're seeing. Republican, of course.
Look, we cannot operate in isolation. The Department of Justice cannot operate in isolation. They have a responsibility to report to members of Congress, to be accountable to members of Congress. Look, if this was the Biden administration, we would have hauled their asses in front of our committee, like yesterday. Mm-hmm. And so we've given them a lot of grace because they're friendlies. They're a part of the Trump administration, but that leash can only be so long, or that level of grace can only go so far. And so at some point they need to put up, and they need to demonstrate to the American people, show us your work. When you say that there is no evidence, show us your work. Show us how you came to that conclusion. Right now, I don't see any of those results.
And in many respects, they did a good job with that with the JFK files. I mean, you can go on. It's a searchable database. It's huge. They released it all. Do that with Epstein. I want to go to the Rumble chat because there's some interesting comments in here. The terrible Great Reset. Why have every single one of the supposedly conservative podcasters run cover for a pedophile and rapist who used his failed business for money laundering? Well, I don't know every single conservative podcaster you're talking about. Certainly, I'm not running cover for Epstein. I certainly, Benny Johnson's not running cover for Epstein. Now, I would offer up my buddy, Dan Bongino, who I worked with closely at the National Rifle Association. I know the man well. I have great respect for him. I believe he's acting like a soldier. You could make an argument he's running cover. It's not for Epstein, though. He's running cover for whoever is in those files that has something to do with national security, my personal belief. But what other conservative podcaster is running cover? I just don't see it. Feel free to comment in the chat. Terrible Great Reset. And then we have a metamorphosis. If we don't have accountability, history as always repeats itself. Children are more important than anything. This will not go away. We, the people, 80 million, will never let it go. I agree with you. That is why I keep talking about it. Now, what about from the FBI perspective? And I think this is very important. What about the FBI perspective? How does something like this happen? We're told there's 2,000 documents, but then we get a 2-page report that says there's nothing to see. Well, that doesn't make any sense. We're told there were FBI agents that were hiding these documents. Well, you can't hide nothing. So what were they hiding if there's nothing to see? We've got 2 people convicted of crimes, Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. How do you convict them of crimes if there's nothing to see? You got Prince Andrew, who was right there, and by all accounts, hung out to dry with Epstein at his own fault. Well, if there's nothing to see, then why was Prince Andrew getting the heat that he's getting? You got Epstein's Island, and you have victims who have come forward and said what they went through. Was there nothing there? Well, who was abusing those victims? See, it just doesn't add up, folks. So how does this happen inside the FBI? My buddy Steve Friend, former FBI agent, whistleblower from inside the FBI. We talked about this last night on the Real America's Voice show. Here's that conversation.
Look, I'm just as disgusted as you are about this entire thing, and not just because of the salacious nature of these allegations about Jeffrey Epstein that have gone back for years. I think everybody should be justifiably outraged about children being abused. But really at its core, what does the Jeffrey Epstein case represent to MAGA? It is a question, a fundamental question of, do we have a two-tiered system of justice in which the elite avoid all accountability, all the different metrics of our system, all the different levers are always pulled so they can avoid any sort of accountability for their wrongdoing. And we are all waiting on bated breath to see if, in fact, this list, whatever you wanted in any other form, was revealed. Then that would put the pressure on the DOJ to actually bring the hammer down on those individuals. And now we've been deprived of that.
Well, you know, it's very interesting because there are people that were involved other than Epstein, and nobody has been held accountable. The idea was he was blackmailing people. Even so, we knew who they were, and they're engaging in sexual activity with minors. They need to be held accountable, as you mentioned. Then Mike Benz, who's a former State Department official, was on the program yesterday, and he talked about Epstein's ties to the Middle East and possibilities. Now, this is all speculation, that his ties to the Middle East, possibly those he blackmailed, are involved in peace talks right now, world leaders. It would upend something like that. Let me play this cut 6 for the guys behind the glass. This is Mike Benz.
What you're dealing with here is an international intelligence web. Take his role in Iran-Contra. That was illicit arms trafficking and money laundering for a CIA activity that violated international law. In that one operation alone, you have the CIA in the U.S., you have Israeli intelligence, you have UK intelligence, and you have Saudi intelligence. That's 4 different countries' intelligence agencies running through this single person.
And that single person, of course, would be Epstein. Steve, is there any scenario in your mind that if you knew behind the scenes, you'd say, okay, I understand why they're not releasing it?
I could understand that, but it'll never be justified in my mind, because regardless of what your considerations are, if you're ultimately coming down to it's for the greater good, that's why it's okay, people who raped small children can get away with it, then that just fundamentally means to me that this country is no longer an objective force for good. We are no longer great because we cannot be good, because we have said that out loud. And to me, this is a failure of leadership at the Department of Justice, at the FBI, and all the way up to the White House, because Donald Trump getting on the bully pulpit and actually running interference for Pam Bondi when she was asked a legitimate question by a journalist in that case is tremendously disappointing. And it's a betrayal of the campaign promises that he and his entire campaign made throughout the 2024 election.
Yeah, I will agree it's disappointing. I don't want anyone to forget he's still doing some great things for this country, and America's back on track. And it just seems to take away a little bit from all of this. I think there may have been another way they could have handled it that would have been better than this, because MAGA is disappointed. There's no doubt about it. This does, as you say, it feels like a betrayal on all of this. So I'll ask you from inside the FBI. If Pam Bondi says there's 2,000 pages of documents that were found in New York, how do you come from 2,000 pages, from convicting Epstein, convicting Maxwell, to a 2-page report that says there's nothing to see here?
Well, you just have to select the right people to just follow orders and write those 2 pages in a very clean and sterile format here, because the people who actually do this sort of work, they have a passion for putting these evildoers away, would not idly stand by here. So I think it was probably someone from the outside here and wanted to just brush it under the rug, which is also why we saw the leak happen over a holiday weekend, July 4th, in the middle of summer, and also because of the events down in Texas.
I want to reiterate, because I get so much of this on social media, that they say, oh, this is Trump's admission that he's on the list, and Elon said he's on the list. In my opinion, one, you don't go about it this way if you're really trying to cover that up. 2, between Biden and Obama and the access to these files, we would have known about Trump if there were salacious details about this. I don't think that's it. I think there's something more to it. Have you tried to speculate at all as to what this is?
I'm doing the best I can, but I mean, I'm coming up with different scenarios, but ultimately it comes down to the fact that there is just way too much smoke there for there not to have been some sort of fire. And I agree with you, though, on the Donald Trump. The selective leaks that we've seen about President Trump during his first and now second administration to friendly left-wing media, to me, lends me to believe that this would have been ultimately leaked if he had been one of the evildoers here. We would have seen this case pushed forward very fast under a Biden administration.
Yeah, it's a great point. And think about this 2-page DOJ report that basically washes away everything was released to Axios, which makes no sense. I have to wonder if there's some evil force at play inside the Trump administration that's trying to make Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, and Dan Bongino look bad.
I think the leak to Axios was actually strategic because it is a left-wing source that maybe would soften the blow to MAGA, to the right-of-center individuals, because they might at first glance say, oh, I'm not going to lend that any credence because that's not a legitimate news source for me. And that was maybe a strategic leak because leaks are a tool of the director of the FBI, of the attorney general, and of the president. So it might have been actually just their own decisions to soften the blow for themselves and not really get the fallout, which is why we're also seeing them pivot away to sort of look at James Comey and John Brennan, who are outside the statute of limitations. At the same time, they look at Christopher Wray for the Chinese involved in the 2020 election. That's still within the statute of limitations. He's still gettable. As long as we're going to pivot, let's go after that guy.
It just seems like all the Trump confidants go to jail while Trump's not in office, and all of Biden and Hillary and Barack's close cohorts, everybody skates. Something's wrong. I don't know whether it's just we're not tough enough or what it is. Or they're outsmarting us. Either way, something's got to change. Steve Friend, it's always great having you on the program. I appreciate you coming on as usual.
Thanks, Grant.
So Steve Friend is a great patriot. He's a great friend of my program and mine. And just so happens his last name is Friend. So it's really tough position for Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, and Dan Bongino to be in if my assessment is right, that they are being told from the top, from the boss, from Trump, that we got to cover it up in the name of world peace. I don't know. That's what it sounds like to me. This was Pam Bondi answering the question about the Epstein files that Trump didn't want her answering.
Sure. First, to back up on that, in February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I said, I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day. To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively the video was not conclusive, but the evidence prior to it was showing he committed suicide. And what was on that, there was a minute that was off the counter. And what we learned from Bureau of Prisons was every night, they redo that video. It's old, from like 1999. So every night the video is reset, and every night should have the same minute missing. So we're looking for that video to release that as well, showing that a minute is missing every night. And that's it on Epstein.
We got a Bureau of Prisons where a minute's missing every night? I mean, what in the hell kind of operation are we running here? This is literally, we're in 2025. We can get a Ring doorbell system, for crying out loud, and you'll be better off. The video she's talking about is this. This is a video, and you see it skips. Watch what happens when it gets to 59. And then it's going to skip a minute. What the hell kind of nonsense is that? But nothing to see here either. It does that every night. And by the way, Pam Bondi doesn't know about the intelligence connections when a U.S. attorney had done this investigation. How do you not? So again, it gets back to Alex Acosta and get, as Mike Benz says, get those transcripts from the interviews that he did, from the witness testimony that he took. Much of that transcripts are still sealed. Get the transcripts, go through them, release them online. What did the intelligence community say about Epstein? I would love to see some of that stuff. So I'm not sure we're ever going to see it. And that, to me, folks, is very, very unfortunate. Hey, my friends over at the wellness company, twc.health/grant. I don't know if you have one of these emergency medical kits yet. Prescription medications in here that are so important for you to have in case of emergency. Natural disaster, terrorist attack, drugstores closed down. This will save a life. Z-Pak, amoxicillin, you name it, some of the most common, including ivermectin in those kits. But what I am hot on, really, is this idea that 60 million Americans have parasites in them. Well, the wellness company has a parasite cleanse to get rid of that. Those are worms in your fish. You eat the fish, those worms are in you now. They infect your brain, your spine, your lungs. They're all over the place. Wellness companies 3 times sold out parasite cleanse, gets rid of it all. Brain clears up, skin conditions clear up. Mebendazole and ivermectin. That is basically what it is. And it's known to clear up these parasites. So amazing stuff. I urge you to get this parasite cleanse and start it. twc.health/grant. Use the promo code GRANT for 10% off. It's not cheap, folks, but it is well worth it. I am on the parasite cleanse myself because I did not want the thought of those invaders crawling around my body or my brain. Truth is, I think that's what happened to Liver King, going crazy with all the raw meat. I think he's infected with parasites. You know who Liver King is. If you don't, you can Google it, see his. Oh, no, don't Google it. Just go back and see one of my old podcasts on all of that. All right, folks. So in the end, just to review here, the evidence is overwhelming that he was running a sex trafficking ring. We have not learned who his clients were. They need to be held accountable for the victim's sake. Number 2, I want to know what the intelligence community's role in all of this. Was taxpayer dollars being used to sex traffic children for powerful people in order to blackmail them? I believe the answer is probably yes, and I think it goes to the Middle East. And I think the Middle East peace talks right now is exactly why President Trump doesn't want this information released. I'm not running cover for anybody. I'm only giving you my assessment of what I actually think was going down here. So there's some interesting links. The chat is fabulous today, and we got a great audience. And because of the great audience, I'm going to ask you folks, please do me a favor, spread the word, okay? Stinchfield 1776 on all the social media platforms. Like the video, spread the video, copy the link, send it to your friends. In my opinion, this has been a great little layout of what Epstein may have been involved in, why the government cover-up, who's behind the cover-up. Spread this with your friends. We'll help it go viral, okay? This is the type of stuff we're doing here every day. If you're new to the program, thank you for sticking with me. And I come on just about every day at 12:15 Eastern time, basically Monday through Thursday. So, again, we will see you next week. And don't forget the Real America's Voice show tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern time. We'll have a big show for you as well. God bless all of you. Stinchfield's Army rolls. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you soon.